Are you looking for a new 3D printer for your studio at home or work maybe? Well, I have this Sovol SV01 that I've been printing with for quite a while, and I would like to do a review on it and recommend it to you for your use. As you may have seen in a previous video, I have the Ender 3 along with quite a few other printers in the stable. Ender 3 is a great printer. It has brought a lot of new people into the hobby, and I feel that it has done a great job at that. However, I have never liked Bowden tube printers. I may have ranted about this on previous videos. And if you're not familiar, a Bowden tube printer is one that uses a Teflon tube in between the extruder motor and the actual extruder nozzle itself, which will be located down here on this machine. On this particular machine, though, the extruder is actually located on the carriage, we'll call it, and it is a direct drive. And this one actually isn't direct drive because it has a gear down unit that comes off of our stepper motor that is the drive for the filament. It drives a gear here, and it's, I don't know, it's like a 3-to-1 gear ratio or something. It probably says on the spec sheet. I really don't care. I just want a direct drive. But the new ones that have been coming with this gear down actually give you a lot better resolution and work extremely well. Because the stepper motors really don't run that fast on your extruder, so you can use some gear down. You still get all of the response and speedy extraction needs, speedy retraction needs that you would need on a device like this. So let's go over the features of this, why I would like it to recommend it to you if you need a new printer or if you're looking to get into printers, and essentially why this is actually a really good deal in the market today. So let's start off with the main features. It's got a big build platform. This is a larger build platform than the Ender 3 has. That is good, although the Ender 3 is plenty big. But with a big build platform, you have the problems of heating them up. It's always a pain in the butt to heat them up and wait. Say I need to go to 80 Celsius for ABS or whatever filament, PETG, that needs a hotter bed. It takes a really long time, but what Sovol did on this unit is they included a 24-volt power supply and a 24-volt bed heater, so this one heats up in almost no time compared to all my old printers, like 4 years old or however old they are at this point. This guy is ready in a flash. I love it. On top of the 24-volt system with the 24-volt bed heater, it comes with this glass on top. The glass is easily removable. I won't even worry about showing you that. You know what it looks like to remove glass from a printer, and you can have 2 of these beds if you want to do, really fast sort of production style printing. But this bed, and I'm not sure if you can really see that through the camera, but this bed is actually powder coated on top. So you don't need any adhesion agents if you're using some wacky filaments like TPU, that's the one, the flexible filaments. When you're printing on glass, you either need to use tape on top or you have to use glue stick on top, or in this case, we would be able to print directly on this bed because it is powder coated. And if you have a glass cooktop surface at home, you are used to what this looks like and feels like. It's the exact same process. Somebody was like, hey, I wonder if I'd work on a printer bed, and they tried it and it worked, and now a lot of printers are coming with that. So really good little extra bonus that they included on this printer. It also has the filament detector sensor, which I don't use. These things can be kind of sketchy. I'll just replace the roll before it runs out, or sometimes maybe the roll's going to break or there'll be some other problems that could happen that would make it really nice to have this filament detector on here. But honestly, more problems than they are worth in my opinion. But hey, it comes with it. If you want to use a filament detector, then there you go. That's all you need right there. There's a little piece that bolts in somewhere probably, and you can figure it out. It's in the instruction booklet, so you can figure that guy out. It also has, which you can't see, two motors on the Z. So a problem with the Ender 3, of course, is that it only has one motor, and if you get your transverse carriage or whatever it's called out of whack, then it doesn't print flat. Everything will have a skew to the print. It's really hard to get your bed leveled. And of course, this can have the exact same problem because it has 2 lead screws on the side, and if one of them is turned a little bit more than the other when you get started, then you'll still have the same tilt problem. However, the way that I figure this thing out is essentially I flatten the bed, I lower this all the way, or I raise it all the way and compare it to something else on the machine. If you really want to get fancy with it, you would level your surface that you're sitting on, and then you would level this with, whatever level you want to use. There's lots of levels out there. And that would also work too. I just use my eyeball. It's never given me a problem. A lot of the things that I print don't really matter if there's just a teeny bit of, it's not even parallax because, or parallelogram, because parallelogram would have both surfaces tilted. It would just be your top surface really that would be tilted, and every level would print like that. At any rate, something to look out for, but this one does have dual Z stepper motors, so you don't ever have any problems if you try to go up too fast that your skipper steps a motor, your stepper skips a motor. No problems like that. I've had no problems with this machine at all, really. It seems to have the firmware limited to where it won't skip steps, even if you tell it to go 1,000 millimeters a second or something like that. It smoothly accelerates and won't get up to that top speed. And it also has thermal runaway protection in the firmware, and that's a big problem with the Ender 3. They may have upgraded that by now, but thermal runaway protection, while I've never had that problem myself, if your hot end thermistor goes out and the machine doesn't have that, then it'll just try to keep heating and keep heating and keep heating until it essentially catches on fire. That has happened to people. So right now, what am I printing on this machine? I am using PLA Plus from, I believe, eSun. Yep, from eSun, because they had this really nice purple. And the last project that I was printing were these little, they're called bites or whatever. It's for glass blowing. You put it on the end of your blow tube, you keep it in your mouth, you can work your piece like this, and then you can blow into the tube. And these are consumables. So I helped with Dustin Revere from Revere Glass. He helped guide me when I was doing the 3D modeling to get it this nice, sexy shape. This is not a shape that I would normally be making. I'm a very utilitarian guy. It would be blocky. It would not be this sexy feminine form, essentially, that he guided me through. But he essentially, I guess you would say that he designed it, I designed it, whatever. This was his shape, and I did it in CAD, and then I print them for him whenever he needs them. And this machine we do, let's see, I think it's 50 in a batch or something like that. No problems. But as you can see, it's got a really tiny piece on top. And if you imagine 50 of these going across the bed, that's essentially one huge retraction test. And on a Bowden tube machine, man, it is really tough to get that dialed in just right, where you don't have gaps, but at the same time, you don't have stringing between all the pieces, because I'm not going to print 50 pieces or 100 pieces or 200 or whatever the batch calls for, and then have to clean up every single one with strings. And on top of that, there's going to be strings on the inside if your printer is stringing. I tried it on the Ender 3, big fail, couldn't tune out the stringing, and I said, you know what, I need a direct drive, and my old direct drive printer had bit the dust, so I picked up this guy for the job, and a couple test prints in, got it dialed in, and as long as I keep my filament dehydrated, then it is on point. Just, print them all, absolutely no cleanup required on there, and I love it. So let me know what kind of things that you would want to print on the printer. Why would you go with a direct drive over a Bowden tube setup? And in particular, I'm going to tell you why you should, if you don't know, because you might not know, and we're going to have to draw this out. So before I get into that, I would like to say these used to be listed for $350, which in itself was a really good price for what this is, for the big build size. I think this is like a 300 millimeter or something like that. 24 volt system, has all the fancy bells and whistles that you would want. Direct drive, has the gear down on there. Just in general, I think a really good value at $350. Now they're selling for $300 prime, delivered to your door on Amazon right now. I had never even heard of Sovol, and the only reason why it came across was because Amazon advertised it to me, and I was like, hey, direct drive, $350, 24 volts, I'm sold. And of course they sold it to me. But let's talk about Bowden tubes and why they are bad. Also, they're really hard to tune. So I was doing another job, and the only way that I could get it to print was slow, and it was because of the Bowden tube. And so it took almost 4 times as long as it would take on this machine because of the hard edges. And that is really what we're going to talk about here. So let's assume we are printing a straight line, and then we have a 90-degree turn. For a printer, it has to slow down before it can make that 90-degree turn. As it is slowing down, a Bowden tube setup, which is going to be long, it's going to have, maybe a half meter of filament in there with all that pressure feeding, because it's trying to feed from way up here where your extruder is, and it's going through that tube, and you've got all that pressure built up. So what happens when you make these turns on a Bowden tube setup, it goes to your turn, and as it's slowing down, that pressure's just, it's getting released essentially in your corner, and then it speeds back up. So you'll have your normal thin lines going across, you will have this big blob on your corner, and then it continues on as normal in your normal extrusion width. The only way to get around this without really fancy programming, or some slicer softwares can actually look ahead, so to speak, and they will give you a, let's see, what's it called? Coast. Coast doesn't always do the job, because that's sometimes on the end of your lines. It's just, in my opinion, a bigger hassle than it's worth. If you're doing nothing but round shapes, though, you'll never come across this problem. It is only hard corners. If it's going to be a corner that's about 135 degree or less, depending on the length of the Bowden tube, you're going to start having more and more problems with essentially a big blob coming onto your corner. If it's a hard corner, then it will literally go, and you will have these big, massive corners on a Bowden tube setup, because it literally can't accelerate well. The Bowden tube system cannot depressurize as fast as your machine can decelerate and re-accelerate into the other direction. So, like I was saying on the one job that I was doing, where it was a bunch of pieces that needed to fit together tightly, I had to drop down from 60 millimeters a second, which this machine would do just fine, down to 15 millimeters a second to get this job done, because it was nothing but hard edges. Nothing but hard edges that fit into hard edges. It was squares fitting into squares, and it was the most frustrating thing that I ever had to do to tune. And it was like, all right, well, we'll go half the speed here. Let's see what happens. Let's reduce our extrusion rate a little bit. Let's see what happens. And it kept having these blobs on the corners, and there was really no two ways around it. The only way for me to get the tune that I needed with the slicer software that I had available to me was to go down to 15 millimeters a second from 60. So I had to cut it in half, and then I had to cut it in half again. I honestly wasn't extremely pleased with the corners, but they still worked, they still fit. They were within tolerance, so it was good enough for me. I really wish I had done that job on this Sovol, but c'est la vie. The next time I need to run something like that, I'm going to use this printer instead. I'm going to bring it home if I have to. And it's a small machine. I can actually just, pick it up and move it easy enough. So, what I would like to know from you, have you used this printer before? Are you using an Ender, and do you have problems with tolerance on your Ender 3? What kind of things do you want to print, or would you want to print? And do you use Thingiverse? That's kind of one of my favorite places to go. There's lots of these STL, file, servers, or whatever you want to call them out here, where they just have all these STLs and different various formats of 3D printer files. They're not even for the printer. You still have to throw them into slicer software. But let me know what you like to search for on those. Maybe there's some favorites that you've come across, or maybe you even have your own Thingiverse profile. And go ahead and link it down in the comment. Hopefully YouTube will allow it. If not, I'll try to sort out, because it usually holds comments that have a lot of links in it. So I'll do my best to kind of sort through those and get them posted down there, but do your best. Post them down below, or at least say what your username is on Thingiverse if you've got RC stuff, because I know a lot of you print for RC car parts. The majority of what I print isn't even RC car related. It's going to be parts for, we got these gates here. We got this little motor end cap here. I do it sometimes. We used to print all of the cones, of course, the scale cones, but I have not actually been able to tune a printer good enough to do a whole tray of cones. I would like to try that on this machine now. But again, it's one big retraction test, and TPU is just as stringy as it gets. And if I'm going to print a whole tray on them and it has strings all over it, I'm not even going to sell them. I'm not even going to try to clean that up. It is not worth my time, especially when we're selling, 10 of them for $5. I could spend well over 50 cents of my own time just cleaning up strings. And on top of that, it doesn't look good because you have blobs where it's strung from. Even if I hit it with a heat gun, it would blob onto itself. It'd be just ugly. And a scale cone, if it's going to be ugly, I am not going to sell it. So what I need is a printer that can do what I want without needing cleanup. And the Sovol SV01 is that printer for the most part. I'm sure it's going to have some sort of downsides at some point with some sort of shape that I haven't tried yet. If you have come across any shortcomings on this, let me know. I would like to hear some more feedback on this printer. But so far, this is probably the best low-cost printer that I have used. It didn't take hardly any sort of tuning. It was between a millimeter and a half and 3 millimeters of retraction, and that was pretty much it. That was the tune that I had to do. So I've been really pleased with this. I haven't been using it a whole lot lately, but it's always good to have sitting around for when you need it. I'm going to be printing some sliders off for some of these projects here soon, so I'll at least need to do that, and this is going to be the machine for it. I would like to add, also, the surface finish on this machine is impeccable. If you saw on previous videos, I have a, oh boy, it's been so long. What was that printer you had too? Maker Select.
Monoprice Maker Select.
Yes, the Monoprice Maker Select is what I've printed a lot of stuff on, and it has this salmon skin look to pretty much everything that comes off of it that prints in a straight line across the bed in either X or Y. It has this ripply salmon skin effect, and while it's not pleasing to look at, there's absolutely no functional problems in it. But this printer, from what I have done so far, has no salmon skin on it. So I don't know if it's just improved stepper drivers that have less harmonics in it, or what they have done to this to smooth it out, but I'm very pleased. I guess that's about my takeaway. If I was going to give it a 5-star out of 5-star rating, this would be the printer to do that. Especially in a $300 price range. I mean, come on, $300 for this is a screaming deal for the size that it is and for all the quality that they seem to pack in. So, not only the 5 stars, but I'm gonna give it 2 thumbs up. And you let me know if you've tried one. Let me know if you're looking for a new printer. I do believe this is the one that you should buy today. So, as always, I do thank you for tuning in, and have a good day.